Alright, so I've been excited about making this video all week pretty much. We got Meydan Fashion Friday this weekend. Obviously, a lot of group races, two group ones, one group one on the dirt and one on the turf. And we kind of see sort of, who are going to be these really good horses during the Dubai Carnival. Especially in the UAE 2000 Guineas, the winner of that will probably go to the UAE Derby. And as well as the other dirt races, we're going to see, potential World Cup contenders, the Godolphin Mile, those sorts of races. So, I'll start off on the Firebreak Stakes. A mile on the dirt. Last year, I remember Laurel River was racing in this first up off winning the World Cup the year before. And, Tiger O'Shea sat a bit lower around the corner. And was eventually paddling when King Gold rolled him. I think Laurel River was like $1.30 and King Gold was 66 to 1 or something. So that was an interesting installment of the race. But this year we got Commissioner King at the top of the market, Mendelssohn Bay, Hypnos, who is an American horse. I don't know that much about. Meshtri, who is very interesting to me, to be honest. Obviously, last start you can kind of put a pen through. Crown Board, who's a turf horse in England. Fort Payne, who's won on the dirt here before, and Meydan Dubai at the bottom. When I was looking at the market, or when I was looking at the field before it got priced up, I was really high on Commissioner King. He won a Saudi Derby as a 3-year-old. He kind of had a bit of a weird career after that. That might be down to being trained in Saudi Arabia. I'm not too sure, but now he's with Bupat Sema, and he did very well last start. So he's probably the rightful favourite, although he's very short. Even seems very short for him. Obviously, Mendelssohn Bay is very, very good over a mile. But I actually really like Meshtri for this race. He's won a Group 2 over this distance before. He can be a bit hit or miss. Obviously, last start was a bit of a stinker. The last race he had last prep was I think it was this race. And he trailed Laurel River, and if you know how Laurel River goes, he just goes so hard. And obviously a horse like Meshtri, who doesn't have that level of class, was never going to keep him up, and eventually fell out the TV. But this year, I think he's a good bet. He's like $13 on Bet365. So I'm gonna have something on him, I think, just in case these. You've seen it before where these two favourites go really hard up front and then something catches them. So if Meshtri doesn't trail them too closely, I reckon he's a good chance. And especially at that price as well, So you just stake accordingly when they're a bit bigger. Alright, so I think Meshtri will win that. But if he doesn't, Commissioner King probably is the play, but he's just very short at evens, I think. Alright, move on to the next race. You got the 7 furlong Alpha Heady Fort, Group 2. I'm going to be honest, it's a bit of a nif-nuff race. I remember last year Meydaan won it. I think he just beat Mysterious Knight. And James McDonald was on board. I remember last year James McDonald was on this horse and Kafaf, who won the long distance race at the end of the card. And I remember both were priced ridiculously for having J-Mac on board. So, back to this year. I think Witness Stand is quite interesting. He's coming off. I think he ran in the. I know he finished in the foray at Longchamp. I forget what race it was before. It might have been the City of York. Actually, I can just check on it. Fuck. But I know he's coming off some really hard races. No, so it was. Oh, that's right. It was the Champion Sprint and the foray. But he's coming off some really hard races. He could run a big race here. Honestly, it's a bit of a nif-rough race. I don't really. It's not a great deal to talk about. Obviously, audience getting hammered around here. I think Mysterious Knight's probably the main horse to back here, but just drawn barrier 10. I know if I back it and it loses, that's an instant reason to blame. So. I think barrier 10's is too much of a deterrent. Although 3 to 1, that's a good price for it, I think. We'll move on to the next race. All right, the Group 3 Al Shindagha Sprint on the dirt. It's pretty clear cut this race to me. I think Nasseeb's just going to win here. He's carrying a bit more weight than last time, I believe. I think he was level weights with Mufasa last start. Now he's carrying a little bit more. And Dark Saffron carrying the most, who just hasn't really fired this prep. You know, won the Golden Shaheen last year at a giant price. It was actually an amazing ride from Connor Beasley too, because Tours, who was the favourite, was flying up the inside. He just shut the door on him. And it was a great bit of riding by Connor Beasley. But I think, El Nasseeb should just win this. And I'm actually shocked that he's odds against, to be honest. I thought he would have been like $1.90, $1.80. Because, he just, especially with Sylvester de Souza on board, who is absolutely one of the best jockeys on the Dubai circuit. Him and Connor Beasley are just so underrated in general. El Nasseeb should just win this. And I think he's going to be a big chance in the Golden Shaheen this year. Just that closing style. He just, he's not a complicated horse. So, I think, El Nasseeb wins here. This Drew's Gold's very high up in the market. Obviously, William Buick booked, which is a massive positive. Let me see his go, because I haven't really looked into this horse that much. Yeah, so he won first up. I think it might have been a handicap. Yeah, so I think this will be different gravy, to be honest. El Nasseeb, winning at this level already. We'll move on to the next race. Oh yeah, here we go. The 5 furlong Blue Point Sprint, Group 2. I like how at Dubai they just chuck the Group 2 tag on and just every random horse out of the UK just comes here, or every random horse in Dubai just runs in it. It's actually quite a good race, to be fair. You've got last year's winner West Acre, obviously carrying much more weight than last year. You got Cover Up, you got Spartan Arrow. Down the bottom you got Pontos. He's still going. And to be fair, Mikhail Barcelona's back on board, and whenever he's riding, he's always in the finish. So that's an interesting dimension to the race. I think Cover Up and Spartan Arrow are the horses to be on here. I like Cover Up a lot. William Buick. This horse does, from last year, he does go very well on the Dubai circuit in these sorts of sprints. And also, his book just out. How do I explain it? His barrier is just outside Pontos, and normally Pontos is really good at giving horses a trail into the race, because you know how he runs. He just goes flat out in a straight line. We saw in the Nunthorpe 2 years ago, he just flew down the straight, and Bradsell just tracked straight into the race from him. So I think Cover Up's drawn perfectly here next to Pontos. And then another horse I like here is Spartan Arrow. He's coming off a listed win at Dundalk in a big field over 5 furlongs. I remember last year in those sorts of like the Qatar Stakes, those Group 2, Group 1s over 5 furlongs, people were saying that he was going to be the sort of sprinter to jump out of the ground. And he kind of didn't really show it. But I think, he's come here, he's fresh. I mean, he's had, I think, 3 months off. So, and Holly Doyle's there as well to ride him, and she's the regular rider. So, I think Spartan Arrow is a really good bet at each way. That'll be my 2. Cover Up to win, Spartan Arrow each way. The other horse to talk about is West Acre. I'm going to be honest, and I don't think this is the worst take, but I think he's a bit fried from his 3-year-old campaign here. He was a real revelation last Dubai Carnival. He won this race as a 3-year-old carrying 40 kilos basically. No, not 40 kilos, but he was carrying virtually no weight. And I think they ran him in the King Stand Stakes later in the year, and he was still a 3-year-old. I think it's just I think he might be a bit fried. He might go and prove me wrong, but I'm happy to side with the other 2 in the market, to be honest. Yeah, there's too many asterisks with West Acre. All right, we'll go on to the next one now. All right, first of the Group 1s, the Al Maktoum Challenge over 1,900 metres. This is probably the best race on the entire card in terms of pure competitiveness. you've got Heart of Honour. He was sort of a breakout 3-year-old last year. Did very well on the Dubai circuit, although it was very unlucky in the UAE Derby where he got just beat by like a whisker. And then they campaigned him quite daringly, to be honest. They ran him in the Preakness Stakes and the Belmont Stakes, where he didn't really deliver in either of them. Obviously, they're worlds apart from what he was doing in Dubai. But, you know, he's had that experience. You know, he's come back this prep. He's won both of his starts. Safi Osborne retains the ride, as you'd imagine. But he's just got a few quirks. He fucks around a little bit in the stalls. And he can be, like, he can take a lot to get going. So it's absolutely crucial that Safi Osborne stays on him. She knows him the best. And then you've got Walk of Stars, who, you know, he looked really good last season, and then he kind of fell apart in the Saudi Cup. I think he did have a few issues. And then he ran very credibly in the Dubai World Cup. So he's the classiest horse in the race for me. But my only issue with him is that, you know, he's turned 7. He's not getting any, I don't reckon he's getting any better. You know, he ran third last start. Well, his first start, but even then. So he's not getting any older. So just based on that alone, he's not getting younger, sorry. So just based on that alone, I can't really back him. And now you got Imperial Emperor. Obviously, Tiger O'Shea chose Walk of Stars over him, so that's all you really need to know. But to be fair, on his day, Imperial Emperor, you know, he's very good. He won last start. It's a real toss-up between the top 3. Artorias, you know, he's kind of like, he's a bit overhyped in recent years. You know, this Juddmonte horse came out of the US. Obviously, Buick booked as a massive positive, but same thing as Walk of Stars. You know, he's a 7-year-old. He's not getting any younger, so I'll look away. There's a few horses down the bottom here that I would want to back because I've liked him in the past, but just based on their recent form, I just can't touch them. Like Tumbarumba, I was really high on him for the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. Cabo Khan as a 4-year-old, that horse was looked like what his father looked like, basically, California Chrome. And then in recent years he's just fallen away, which is, it's kind of sad and you can kind of tell when he runs his heart's not in it. But he's absolutely beautiful horse, Cabo Khan. I remember when he came on the scene out of Kazakhstan, I think it was, and it was a Kazakhstan horse. And Killer Collect as well, like he looked amazing. I think as a 3-year-old, he was running really big races, but obviously has had a lot of time off. Good jockey booking, but just off his last start, it was just too bad to be true. I'm going to go with Heart of Honour here. It's racing is a young man's sport, but like maybe not in Australia because you get a lot of older horses, but for the most part, you know, this is getting up to, you know, that 2,000 metre mark. Sort of, I think that'll suit Heart of Honour a lot better, that closing style. And I think, you know, if Walk of Stars and the Imperial Emperor go really hard, it's going to set up the race perfectly for a closer. And assuming he behaves in the stalls and he doesn't, you know, it isn't too much of a challenge to get him moving, I think Heart of Honour should just win this, and that'll set him up for a, you know, potential Dubai World Cup tilt. And the Al Maktoum Classic as well, another Group 1 that falls, I believe, end of February. So we'll move on to the next race. Yeah, I think Heart of Honour is a good one to be on there. Yeah, here we go. No bet race for me. Obviously, 1,800 metres, the Jebel Hatta. I remember this race last year. It was a sad race because obviously Measured Time broke down, but I just remember Romantic Warrior, like a lot of pressure on it to win there because it was running the Saudi Cup afterwards, and he got the job done. But this year, you know, it doesn't take an expert to realise what's going to happen here. Opera Ballet is going to win his inevitable Group 1. You know, a lot of us have seen Group 1 talent in this horse for a long time, maybe even since his first start at Kempton. You know, they tried to rush him. I think it might have been the Craven Stakes that he ran in, and he just, you know, probably wasn't quite ready for it. But now he's really sort of come into his own. He didn't get rushed into like a Breeders' Cup Mile or anything. They brought him to Dubai, and he won the Al Rashidiyah last start. and he should just win here pretty easily. Holloway Boy, I remember I was on him each way last year, and he crawled into the placings. He would have taken his connections on a massive ride. You know, he was a handicapper. I mean, he won that race at Ascot as a 2-year-old, but he was kind of a handicapper, like hauling a ridiculous amount of weight in those races, and now he performed very commendably in these sorts of races last year. Although, yeah, he won't beat Opera Bello here. Obviously, Salawi, Group 1 winner, won the Canadian International over 1.5 miles, so this distance should be way below his preferred distance. And Midak's pretty interesting, but, you know, once again, I think he probably prefers 1.5 miles. Yeah, that's all I have to say. I think Opera Bello wins by about 6 lengths here. All right, on to the second last one. This is an interesting race. The UAE 2000 Guineas on the dirt over 1 mile. I think we all kind of hope that Devon Island wins, because you know it's kind of like, you know, it's pretty cool if Charlie Appleby has a Kentucky Derby runner. That's just, you know, everyone in the UK would get behind that. And also in his last 2 starts, you know, this horse has looked like a legit horse. So I think he's barrier 10 though. That's my only issue. If you've seen how a mile at Meydan works on the dirt, if you're drawn really wide, it's like a dog leg into the first turn, so you just get thrown out into the into the shadow realm pretty much. But you know, I think, to be fair, like last year in this race, all the place getters came from wide barriers. So that contradicts it a bit, but also all those horses were miles ahead of the others in the market. So I think, yeah, for me, I'm looking for horses in lower barriers. And then I noticed you got these South American horses that have won like a listed race or a Group 1 or a Group 2 in Chile or whatever. And then they just get absolutely destroyed here because they carry just a shitload of weight. Especially this Legalized here. You know, he's really high up in the market with good reason too, because he had his first start in the UAE last start in a conditions race, and he was carrying like 9 stone 11, it was just miles more than the others, and he fought out the finish with 6 speed. So he's probably the one South American horse you could have a look at here. But yeah, it's an interesting race. A lot of the sort of, you know, dirt horses that have won kind of emphatically, they're lining up here. But yeah, it's a tricky race actually. But I'm going to go with 6 speed. I was really kind of taken by his win last start. Obviously, William Buick was on board. Mikhail Barcelona on here. And barrier 8, it's kind of like teetering on acceptable. If it was 10 or higher, I wouldn't have bothered. But you know, barrier 8's manageable. Mikhail Barcelona rides the dirt at Meydaan very well. So yeah, I'm gonna have a bet on him, I think. Is there much else in this race? Not really. I just wanted to mention how badly stitched up the South American horses get. All right, on to the final race. Is the Group 3 Al Khail Trophy over 2,800 metres. This is a really good race, to be fair. But I think this will just be Meydaan. He just ticks so many boxes for me. Obviously, he had that trip to Melbourne where he ran in the Caulfield Cup and the Melbourne Cup. And to be fair, in both races he ran quite well. He probably didn't quite get the 2 miles in the Melbourne Cup. So he's extremely fit going into this. Obviously, he had 1 start in Meydaan this prep, and he won quite well. He went up the rails too, which, to be fair, like, I don't know why jockeys go up the rails, because I swear, like, half the time, I don't know why, if they go up the rails, it just never works. But yeah, I think Meydaan's probably the one to be on here. He'll get the 2,800 metres. Epic Poet's pretty interesting, although he hasn't ran since, I believe he ran at Newbury in like September, so he's, coming in here fresh. Yeah, couldn't back somewhere with a gun to my head. West Wind Blows, that's an interesting horse. He in 2023 he raced in Melbourne and ran really well in some of those races, and they were good Group 1s. But I do remember Jamie Spencer. He just Jamie Spencer things really. Yeah, he didn't ride them very well. But yeah, he had some time off. He ran second in a listed race behind quite a handy horse in Shader at Kempton, and then ran at Deauville in a listed race last start. So he's going well. But I just question the form around his last two races, because I don't think they were very deep races. And also, I know I said before that I'm not gonna back an older horse, but I've noticed with these sort of long distance races, you can get away with it because their stamina builds up over time, and they're often better when they're older. And you see in jumps racing, you got 12-year-olds winning Group 1s, so I don't mind backing older horses in these sorts of races. And you saw Dubai Future win the bloody Dubai Gold Cup last year, and he was a 9-year-old, I believe. So anyway, we'll move on from there. Night Walker, he was actually a pretty good 3-year-old in the UK. I think it was Juddmonte owned, but now is trained by Richard Spencer. And there isn't much to say about these bottom ones. I think Cahava and Real Dream come from that sort of E-ball handicap route in the UK. But yeah, I think Meydan's a pretty obvious bet here. He just ticks too many boxes for me. Epic Poet's probably a better horse, but he's not as fit as Meydan, so that'll be my one in that race. So I'll have a few bets on this meeting. It's going to be pretty interesting. I don't think I'll get up for it, but there's some really really good horses going around. There's some good value there as well. So if you like this sort of thing, just like and subscribe. I'm going to do one for the Pegasus World Cup tomorrow because there's a ton of group races there and some good Group 1s. So look forward to that. And if you like this sort of thing, like and subscribe. I'll see you later.